This is Tom Salemi at OIS TV. I am at OIS at ASRS, and I'm here with Dr. Mark Humayun. You are the director, and you know this, of the USC Institute for Biomedical Therapeutics. Right?
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for helping us put together this event. What do you think? The day's just about over. How did it go? Is OIS and ASRS a good fit?
OIS is a great fit for ASRS. It's fantastic. It's well overdue to have OIS actually focus just on the back of the eye. You know, the big meetings, yes, there are some retina talks, but it was really wonderful. Big attendance already, just right out of the gate, and I think it's going to be a big success.
Do you back of the eye and front of the eye guys get along okay?
Yeah, we do. We talk to each other once in a while.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some turf wars going on there. You were honored earlier this year. You got a National Medical Technology and Innovation Medal from President Obama. It sounds really great. What was it like? Was it an honor for you? Obviously, to get an award from the president sounds wonderful. But what did it really mean to you to be honored so publicly and by your country? Excuse me.
Well, it was amazing. The National Medal is really a very obviously given to very few people. I was just blown away looking at the people who've gotten it before in our non-ophthalmic fields, as you mentioned, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. It was really amazing to be on that stage and get that award, and especially for ophthalmology, it's good to really emphasize our field. And in fact, in the opening comments, President Obama only highlighted 2 technologies, and one of it was really our technology to restore sight to the blind.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, it's a story I keep retelling because it's sort of classic medtech where you have that, and we did a blog podcast earlier this year, the sort of aha moment, where you see something that might work and you stick to it, and 20 years later, you've got a device that can help restore vision for people who had lost their sight, which is amazing. What was that process like to go from the moment where you saw what could be possible to the moment to it actually became possible?
Well, in this case, it was a really long process, but but you know, it was enjoyable. I mean, I enjoyed all aspects of it. Lots of ups and downs, a lot of scientific ups and downs. But fortunately, Al Mann, who founded Second Sight, was very true and hard fast to the concept and provided the funding throughout those years. You know, often it's tough enough to struggle with the science, and then you have to struggle with the funding of it. It gets really, really complicated. So I can't thank Al Mann enough for really being there through all those years.
Do you feel that innovation in ophthalmology is still being supported as it was, or more so?
I think innovation in ophthalmology is really being supported by the innovators, and I think the industry is there. But you know, as we heard today, you know, the device side is really under a lot of pressure. I think the money is being moved more to the biologics, the drugs, the cell-based therapies, and I'm just, you know, being a device guy, being a gadget guy, I really hope that trend doesn't go too far to the right, and we continue to fund devices in ophthalmology, in particular retina.
But we had a panel today talking about paying for the drugs as well, and it seems like it's the same story, sort of different chapter for drugs. They're starting to get under the same pressure.
Right. I think, you know, anything for the back of the eye, drug or for the eye in general, or medicine in also, you just, you know, everything is becoming under a lot of scrutiny in terms of cost and cost pressures. I mean, you know, we just heard back when Lucentis was proposed for $2,000 an injection, we didn't think much of it because we didn't think how often we'd use it and for how many. But now that you sit back and look at the total dollar amount, you know, it is staggering, and it is something that, you know, everyone is focused on how to improve that and how to make that better.
We talk about costs as investors and as the business side, but as a physician, how does the emphasis on costs impact your day-to-day life?
Well, in terms of my decision making, it doesn't. You know, you have to give the best therapy you can for the patient, and I think that's first and foremost. I mean, you know, that's what I would do for my eye is what I'd like to do for my patients, and you know, if you stick by that motto, you'll always fare well.
That's a good motto to have. You were on a panel about combination therapy, and what were some of the takeaways from that discussion?
Well, combination therapies is now that we have this wonderful anti-VEGF drugs, which are doing very well for us. You know, how much better could another drug do? And what would be, you know, how would you use it in the clinic? Would you actually give 2 separate injections to a patient versus 1 if it's truly better? how much better would it have to be? Would it have to be just better a couple of letters, or does it have to be better a whole line or two lines? Does it have to be better in the sense that you don't have to inject it every month or 2 months, but in fact, it's 3 or 4 months, increase the duration. So we really talked about a lot of that, and then, of course, in the context of how is this all affordable?
That's come up a lot this day was the cost of the drugs, but the delivery of the drugs also has been an issue. How are things looking on the drug delivery side?
Well, I think the drug delivery side is very exciting. These injections, they work, and when patients show up, when we give them the injections, they work, but patients are elderly, and it's difficult for them to sometimes come in. They're often dependent on their family members to bring them in. So it's very difficult, and our clinics are now better suited to give 50 injections a day, but still it's a big treatment burden. And I think drug delivery devices, whether if they can elute these drugs, where you implant something surgically or maybe inject something into the eye that can last a couple of 2-3 months, would be very important.
And one of the things we didn't talk about in the podcast, because actually it just came out recently, was we're talking about innovation and advances, and we joked about whether to talk about this or not, but the study recently where it was demonstrated that you could regrow optic nerves in mice, and it was done through a really clever way. You're following this field, you're following innovation in the field. Is that another aha moment? Is this something you think that we're going to look at 20 years from now, or maybe hopefully 10 or 5 years from now, and say it's sort of started right then?
Well, it was a very, very interesting study. I mean, we don't grow nerves, either in the body, the eye, or wherever. They're difficult to grow and repair, and so have this treatment that actually, in these animal models, the mice, as you mentioned, they created a crush injury of the nerve, and then were able to, really improve the connection. What was really intriguing about that study was, okay, you can sort of rev up these cells and the nerve cells to maybe sprout at connections. But what was really amazing is these connections knew where to go. Mm-hmm. And, if you just sprouted connections and they went wherever and didn't go to the right places, then they wouldn't benefit you. But what was really interesting is not only the fact that these nerves actually sprouted, but they actually went to where they were supposed to for the most part.
And it sort of demonstrates just how central the eye is to many different parts of the body. I mean, this study involving the optic nerves, I mean, maybe it's translated to other nerve growth elsewhere as well. I mean, the eye is really a place where so many different roads come together, isn't it?
Well, I think it's a great test bed because we understand it very well. As the retina is very structurally organized, we know the neuronal connections, and we can really study it. And the tests that we use are simple, and they're easy to follow. Different types of behavioral testing in animals and so forth. So the eye is a really wonderful test bed for treating neurological conditions.
Mm-hmm. And looking at the business side of things, you're going to be you're the incoming president of the American Society of Retinal Specialists, right? You'll be taking over.
Correct. I'm going to be taking over after this meeting.
So do you go into this with sort of an agenda in mind to things you'd like to accomplish? And if so, can you share some of that with us?
Well, the American Society of Retina Specialists is now the largest society, and it really is growing every year by 10%. So it's really a robust society, and it's really it sets preferred practice patterns. It also is a voice when sometimes cuts are coming for certain procedures. It's able to step in and clarify that. We've spent a lot of time in terms of having doctors have the choice to treat patients, because one of our drugs, Avastin, is very cheap, and so a lot of insurances in different parts really push back and say the patient should have failed Avastin before you use some of these other drugs, where some of these other drugs could be better for these patients in certain diseases. So we really push back to give retina specialists a voice and the ability to use the type of drugs they want to use, and really also help with patient education. So really, what is retina? What is the macula? So to really make them understand. And diabetic retinopathy, that's so important because their diabetic control and how well they treat their diabetes really helps with their retinopathy. So we get the word out there, and I'm looking forward to a busy 2 years of being a president of the society, and we're going to have a lot of great initiatives, including working with the OIS.
I mean, we'll look forward to that. So looking ahead 2 years, when you'll be handing over I don't know if you use a scepter, how do you rule the ASRS?
Crown?
A crown. What kind of successes and milestones do you think we'll see happening over the next 2 or 3 years in terms of in ophthalmology and retina? What would you like to see happen?
Well, I would like to see, the physicians be really able to use the drugs that they would like to use, that they feel are best for the patients, and not be continuously under the pressure of having to use a particular drug because it's less expensive. I think once Lucentis, there's a biosimilar to Lucentis, things are going to change. How much they're going to change, what that pricing is going to be interesting to see. So the world of biosimilars is going to come to retina, and we're going to see how that affects our therapies. And then beyond that, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a gadget guy, so I'd like to see more instruments and devices in the operating room to improve our surgical procedures. Visualization is a big part of it. What we see through the microscope, is at times limited. Digital enhancement in the microscopes. So there are lots of things in drug delivery devices we touched a little bit on. And gene therapy, very exciting area. I mean, who could balk or say anything against being one and done, having one injection, gene therapy, and then it's able to treat disease. And lastly, cell-based therapies, stem cell approaches to treating these difficult conditions. So, it's very, very exciting. I see a lot of these things coming through, from policy to science to therapeutic approaches.
We'll be talking about a lot of it in OIS at ASRS 2017 and 18, I hope.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.